we don't leave people when they're struggling by themselves. For me, the conversation was very simple. It was, I think you can do better, and I think, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Nice.
That's all good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the Jenny podcast, the Entrepreneurial Mindset. My name is Vabe.
And my name's Edward. Today we have an especially exciting guest for everyone, and it is Jack Leung, the previous CEO of Generation Entrepreneur for the past 5 years and currently works within corporate development and ventures for Finder. Welcome aboard, Jack.
Pleasure to be here.
First off, Jack, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, a little bit of context.
Yeah, I'm so I currently work in corporate development and ventures for Finder.com. It's a financial comparison business. We're in 160 countries around the world. Basically, you go on Finder.com and you can see, compare all of your financial product needs. And so we're talking about things like credit cards, home loans, savings accounts, any financial decision that an individual has to make. We have content online that allows you to search and compare. And so we make money when we help consumers make decisions. And so when you click on a Westpac credit card and you believe that's the best one, we make money from Westpac for getting their content to users. So part of my mandate within the business is about mergers and acquisitions. And so it's about buying different companies that allow us to grow quicker. But previously to that, I was the CEO of Generation Entrepreneur, obviously special place that I spent a large amount of my adult life in. And yeah, I went to UNSW for business. And so that's kind of where the fascination with entrepreneurship, just wider business enterprise around the world started from.
Right. Yeah. And what about some of the things outside of work and, your business and school related stuff? Like, what are the sort of the things that you enjoy, like, let's say as a hobby?
Oh, I'm a big sports guy, and so I've played soccer since I was 5 or 6, and so started very young. My dad was a big football fan, and so I think I inherited those genes from him. But
Football
yeah,
or soccer?
Soccer. Sorry, yes. Soccer in Australia. That's been watching games when I was young. I used to play so much. Ended up coaching for a few years as well, for under 12s, under 13s at Sydney FC, and so it was a very special experience. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's good stuff. And so you did end up mentioning that, and that we talked about that you were the CEO of Jenny for the past 5 years, which is obviously no little time of someone's life, especially for people as young as us. Yeah. So how has your time at Jenny shaped you to become the person you are now, since 5 years ago from when you just began to where you're at now? Was it like the friends that you met, or was it the skills that you gained? Like, how has that transformation process been for you?
Yeah, I think when I first joined the partnerships team back in 2016, so I was in first year. I had met Victor, the original co-founder of the business, and it was just a fascinating experience talking to him about business and what Generation Entrepreneur was doing. I never thought about education as a path or working in this industry, a path that I wanted to pursue, but I was just so excited to have a bunch of similar people who just wanted to build something and make a difference in the world. And so I came in actually very young. I was 18 at that time, ended up joining the leadership team a few months later and became CEO in 2017. But overall, I think the two most important things about Generation Entrepreneur has always been about impact on students, seeing what all the work that we do, what it means to these young people, but also for teachers and parents as well. That's one of the biggest things that you see very upfront when you work in a business like ours. It's not just about the impact that you make on a student, but it also is so many people trying to support these young people as well, and being able to play a role in that process is such a unique opportunity, especially for someone at our age. But the second part is also about, I've loved working with the team. Like we grew up together, and so when I first joined in 2016, it was the same team that we were first fresh recruits, and then we became leadership team together. When I took over the organization, that was the core group of people who we took on the world. That was it. And so, oh man, just memories. Yeah, absolutely love it.
Right. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Since you were the CEO of Jenny, what does a great leader look like to you? Who are some of your favorite leaders? I know you've met Obama.
That way, really?
Yeah, wait. I feel like that's a controversial way of phrasing it. I've heard from the people that I've told. It was like a meet and greet, and so it wasn't like we actually met, had a coffee or something like that.
Peer to peer.
Yeah. It was me and my best friend Barack.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, we're on a
As you do.
We're on a first name basis.
Right.
Yeah, there we go. Applause for Brad.
Shout outs if you're listening, Mr. Obama. No, I think leadership is such a funny thing, especially it's always been very weird talking about leadership coming from a young person. When you're at our age, the ability to lead is often written down mainly because we don't know anything. There is not enough experience for people to actually believe in you. The decision making that you make is not as good as someone who's had more experience. And so it's always been fascinating for me. If I would answer that question, I think I index on the ability of, actually, let me take a step back. And I think when I think about good football players, the best team members, they join a team, and not only do they perform well, but they push their team to perform well as well. That is a force multiplier of success. Your ability to come into a group situation and not only perform at your peak, but also be able to challenge and support your team to perform at their best is actually the biggest indicator of success for a team. And so leadership, I think, to me is more about the personal relationships that you have with your team members. And business is a funny topic. When I work at Finder, I think about my peers. At a fundamental level, these are my peers and my friends, but we're part of a team, and our core outcome is to succeed together. And so what that means is my job is to play at my best, but then also to make sure that the people that I'm working with are at their best as well. And so
for sure.
That leadership is, I think those characteristics are important. Yeah.
Right. Would you, you also touched on that bit about especially your relationships and how you're building up not just yourself but around others. Would you say that that leadership also comes in many different forms, or do you think there's an ideal archetype for it? Because I remember we were talking about this earlier with The Last Dance, right?
Yes.
Michael Jordan, many would say, I think undoubtedly the greatest basketball player of all time.
Yes.
But during that documentary, I think many players brought up the fact that, he was relentless. He came off as an asshole a lot of the time.
He's
right?
an intense dude, man.
He's
yeah.
very intense.
Oh, God, yeah.
And so, and I know that he didn't have the greatest relationship with even some of his own teammates as well. So do you think something about that, maybe Michael Jordan wasn't the greatest leader, or that, there are differences to what could be or what defines a great leader?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think Jordan's a very special example. The actual top level answer, I think, is there's no such thing as a perfect archetype of a leader. I think there are fundamental qualities that you need to have, but I think leadership is dependent on the individuality of people. Us three, we are very different people. We've come from different places, different backgrounds. The values we hold are very different. I think fundamentally your ability to, come back to my earlier point, be able to understand who you are and then be able to understand your peers and what motivates them and what they care about and be able to work on collective goals together, that's key. I think if we talk about Jordan in particular, he's fascinating because in sports, it's all about competition. I'm not a big basketball guy, but Jordan is like,
I am a big basketball
oh,
guy,
yeah.
so I'm very
Yeah.
curious to what you say, because I have very interesting views as
Yeah,
well. Yeah,
yeah,
no,
I'm keen.
continue. Yeah.
Yeah, there's what? Why do you pick Jordan? Jordan is, when you pick Jordan on your team, you know that he's gonna play and he's gonna play hard. He's gonna take on players. He's confident. He wants to win. He's there to win, and you know what you're getting with him. There are unsavory factors for people that might turn people off, but I think you know what you're getting with Jordan, and you know what motivates him, and so I like that about him. You can see it's very much driven by where he's come from and who he is. It is such uniquely an MJ type of persona that he has that you can't help but respect that, because it brings the best out of himself and it brings the best out of his team. And I think that is the foundational layer of a good leader. And then of course you build upon those things. For example, for me, I think if I were to characterize my biggest strength as a leader, it is the connection that I have with my team and just how much the success of my team means to me, not only on a professional manner, but also just personally as well. It comes from where I've grown up and who I am. That might be different from someone like MJ. He likes to get people playing at their best all the time, and that's what made him successful. And so I'm a very different person from MJ. So that's I think it's interesting for us to consider that.
Right. Yeah, and I think it just goes to highlight that, yes, that there are, like you said, there isn't that perfect archetype, but that in some ways, you and MJ are similar in that umbrella of leadership that you ultimately, not only do you want to win, but he got angry at his teammates because he expects the best out of them.
Yeah.
If they miss that game-winning shot, he will be mad at them because he expects them and he knows that they should normally be able to make that shot. And I think similar to you, obviously maybe not as aggressive or to the point, but you expect the best out of your teammates as well. And I think I remember in our first podcast actually with Esmond, he touched on this where he wasn't doing too hot here at Jenny, and you actually sat down with him and had a talk with him. And so what was going through your mind at the time, like from being a leader and having to have that sort of talk with someone that you care about, as not only as a team member but as a friend as well?
Yeah, that was a tough time. I think I must have been 19 at the time, actually. I think Esmond, actually, I was probably around 20, and Esmond was 19. It was the first year that I was CEO, and at that age, I think there were a lot of things that you don't know about yourself in terms of how you deal with conflict, how you deal with just expressing your feelings as well. I think at that time it was when you come in when a young person is put into a leadership position, or this is true for tech entrepreneurs, folks who drop out of school to run a technology business or whatever they're doing. When you're given that opportunity, the only thing you know are principles of what makes good business, principles of what makes a good leader, because there is no lived experience. You probably have not had as impactful of a leadership position or as a business owner as you will have as the leader of a business. And so in this situation, I didn't know the best way to deal with this. I think if I were to characterize Esmond at that time, understanding the number one thing that I thought about first was you try so hard to understand people. And for Esmond himself, he was in first year and he was trying to figure out a lot of things about himself, especially coming from a very successful selective school, coming in. It's one of the most prestigious degrees in Australia. He spent a lot of his time trying to figure out who he was. And I think for me, that time allocation towards everything else, there was fundamentally just not enough done for the organization. What I knew at the time was there are minimum expectations of people that I have, and that is only about how hard you work. It's hard to make an argument about quality of work, especially at our age, because we are trying so hard to figure things out. But all I want from our team, the only principle that I really stuck to at that time was, and this was the same principle that I had for myself. I didn't know what it was like to be a good CEO or a good leader, but I knew that I would spend as much time as I could trying to figure that out. And in that situation, I just didn't see that with Esmond. To also counteract that as well, I also knew how much the organization meant to him, and how much he cared about not only the students that we work with, but also the team. It was actually really funny when I first came. There's an interesting thought about dynamics with people as well. So when I first came in the organization in 2016, I was in first year. This was September 2016. I was in the partnerships team, and Esmond was recruited alongside me, and so we go way back. I think that connection so early as well, coming from shared stories, helped stabilize this situation as well, that we were the same people that joined at the same time in 2016. 2 years on, when I became CEO, 2016 September, we joined the partnerships team. January 2017, we were both promoted to partnership directors. And so I have worked with him for a long time. I know who he is. And so January, we got inducted as the leadership team together, and July, I became CEO. And so you can kind of see the rapidly changing dynamics. Well, what was really important to me, especially throughout this whole process, was I wasn't talking to someone who reported to me, but also my friend who I've seen grow up as well. And so in the whole situation, you can't simply look at the situation as someone is not performing as they should, but it is a friend that you've called a friend for so long. And so in the whole situation, it is such a difficult balance. Flash forward to when we did have that conversation. It was a few months of, I think Esmond was still, I think he must have been, it was his first year. He was doing a whole bunch of other university extracurricular activities, and there just wasn't enough outcomes being met. Despite my friendship and how much love I had for him, and I know that he had for me, he and I saw very eye to eye on what it meant to be a part of this organization. And that was the main thing I talked to him about. It was, from my position, I knew what this all meant to him. I wanted to remind him that the obligation that the obligation that he felt for the organization, that he was not meeting them, but I knew that his aspirations were more than that. And so that was a simple conversation for me. I think about that moment a lot, and I think Esmond does as well. The principle that I knew back then was we don't leave people when they're struggling by themselves. For me, the conversation was very simple. It was, I think you can do better, and I think, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Nice.
That's all good.
And I know that he wanted to do more as well. So it was just a simple conversation of, what are we going to do about this? It's either, to me, business is very simple. It's, we're here to play and we're here to win. If we can't do it together, that's fine. That doesn't mean that we're not any less friends for each other. And I think it was just really important to have that conversation. And so I didn't know going in what the right approach was. It was the first time that I really had that conversation. I think you grow up very quickly in those situations, I think. So, yeah, it was an interesting time. Yeah.
Especially as a young 19-year-old, you know.
Yeah. Ez
Yeah,
and I
for sure.
were, yeah.
We
I-
can
yeah.
we can take a second.
No. It's all good. Yeah, I think I'm sure he found that moment very difficult as well, because when you're the whole, what I think about number one is about my position and then also his position as well, and it's like it must have been difficult for him to hear a friend have to call him out on some things that were happening. But I also knew that there was only a positive reaction out of it. I was not there to push him down and to criticize, but it was actually about getting to a better place together. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
That was quite outcome.
I think what you touched on, that it was a very positive thing, because I think there's moments, right? Moments in our lives that we can like really look back to, and I know that for Esmond, that's a particularly, even though it was difficult, I think he still holds it with a lot of pride, that it was a moment for him. He said it himself, it was a wake-up call, that he needs to, sort himself out. And the way that he is now, I think a lot of that was because of that moment.
It's definitely catalyzed by that.
Yeah, exactly. And I hear of so many similar moments within Jenny. I remember the last I-48 that I was at, Ivy talked about her moment and what drew her to Jenny, which was she was at an event, and one of the students gave her a handwritten letter which said, "Thank you for believing in me," which is just beautiful. Like it makes me, and I think we've all at least experienced some kind of moment that has really attached us to this organization, which is
Yeah, I actually remember that. I there was I think this was at Dollar Chill. That was probably, I think, 2019. There was we had, it was wild. There was like 7-8 of us. It was like 160 kids there, man. It was
wow.
it was a lot of students. But yeah, there's those moments I think remind you of the responsibility that you have as well. I think about that a lot from the organization's perspective. My role was not to simply be the face or to lead, but to ensure that the responsibility that students who came to our programs, teachers who've invited us, folks who'd sponsor our program, that we met those responsibilities. Because at its core, Generation Entrepreneur has a right to exist. We have there's a unique place, especially in the New South Wales education system, where there's a need here. And our crew is just uniquely positioned for it. And that is a very special type of opportunity, especially given to someone at our age as well. Yeah.
Were there ever times that you doubted yourself in your position when you were leading?
Oh, all the time. I think the actual answers all the time. I think what makes it's hard, especially at our age, to feel certain about our abilities.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest factors which define me is I believe in myself first, before anyone else would or should. I think for myself, you have to believe that not only, I think there were so many moments that you feel like you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what the answer is, but also I think I knew that eventually I'd figure it out. I back myself to be able to learn and to be able to bounce back. I think resiliency at our age is the most important thing, because the rate of our improvement is going to be correlated to our ability to go into very new and complex situations. The more we do that, the more you improve, but also the higher chance of failure and higher chance that you probably mess up. But that is congruent to improvement. And there were so many times where, especially at our age, I remember in 2018. So I got a call from some friends from the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship. Shout outs. This was January Initiate 48 at Tankstream Labs in the Sydney Startup Hub. It was a Saturday morning. I got a call from a contact from Sydney School of Entrepreneurship who told me that the Department of Education was looking for a high school entrepreneurship program for that year. Sydney School of Entrepreneurship did not at that time focus on high school education. They focused more on offering tertiary programs for folks in TAFE or just the university path. And so they referred the contacts there to me. And I just remember thinking, this is an opportunity right here. I had never gone in touch with someone from the Department of Education before. If you're talking about a big fish to fry for our type of organization, the government is key. Especially when you look at how we run our programs. Our funding is a hard issue for public schools, but we know that public schools need us. And so our number one target that year was to work with the Department of Education. And it was just so funny to have that moment just come to us like that. But I just remember going in and being very nervous. I was downstairs at the Department of Education. At that time, that building was at Darlinghurst, right opposite Hyde Park. And I went there by myself. And especially for our type of age group, I think you start overthinking things. Like, oh man, what if they ask me a really hard question I don't know how to answer? This ain't going to look good for us. But actually, I remember just telling myself to relax and to take that moment and the opportunity ahead of me, just try my best. That was it. And so I went in, and I just remember being all over the place. There were two lovely ladies from the Department of Education who were looking for an entrepreneurship program. They'd never heard about Jenny before. And I just remember describing what I felt for the organization and the impact that we made, the schools that we worked with. And I actually remember the most important thing to me was after about 5-10 minutes, I just showed them the video that we made for January 48, the one in 28. That was 2018. They absolutely loved it.
That was a great video.
Yeah, it's a great video. It just encapsulated so much of what we did just visually. It was just perfect. And I just remember them looking at it and being like, that's amazing. We need that. Yeah, that was fascinating. And so, spoilers for the people at home, but we ended up closing that deal that year. We ran 22 programs. Wow. Oh no, sorry. This is 2019. We ran 22 programs. This was in 20. So what the Department of Education wanted was an incubator program. So they wanted for us to spend 3 months working with 10 student teams and help them build their business. And so what we did that year was open up applications to students across New South Wales to apply for our program, and it was amazing. Yeah, we had just so many mentors come in, and just the whole community supported what we were doing at the end of at the final presentation evening as well. We had the Minister for Education come in, give a speech as well, and it was just it was magical. Yeah, it was yeah.
That's like actually amazing, and I think it's summed up by like regret doing rather than not having regret not done it, right? And the fact that you actually jumped into that is amazing. So we're sort of going to take a slight shift in our topics. And so before we were doing a lot of the internal stuff and, you know, your personal journey along Jenny. And we kind of want to expand that outwards now and look a bit more into your professional sort of life. You did touch up on it at the start, but so you did say that you were currently working at Finder in the corporate development and ventures sector.
Yep.
And so I'll be honest, when I first heard this, to me it just sounded like a bunch of corporate jargon.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I had no idea like what someone in that sector would even do.
Yeah.
So what does your job mainly entail? Like, what
Yeah.
does a day-to-day sort of look like?
Yeah.
And how did you find your way towards Finder from
good.
Jenny?
Yeah.
So like, was it, just some friend referred you, or
Yeah.
did you have to work your way up?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, how was that journey along there?
Yeah, I'll start with the first part. So, corporate development and ventures is, Fred and I. So Fred Shabesta is one of the CEOs at Finder. We just created the function. But there is long history with the corporate development function. Historically, in all the Fortune 500s, well, any big business globally, there are particular people responsible for mergers and acquisitions. And so to define mergers and acquisitions, or M&A, think about it like this. You both are CEOs of a good business. It's probably doing pretty well, 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000 people. Let's say on a yearly basis you make $1 billion US. Fuck, cheering. I'm cheering.
Yeah, for sure.
Just
Cheering for that.
Just a small loan.
Yeah, small loan of $1 billion. On a yearly basis, you might spend, let's say, $500 million. What that means is that at the end of the day, part of that, the rest of that money is profit. That gets taxed by the government, and you're left with a bunch of cash to be reinvested. The job of the CEO is to figure out, where do I put my money that allows me to grow my business faster? So in the particular situation I just gave you, let's say the corporate tax rate is like 25%. So at the end of the day, you probably have around $400 million left. Actually, it's more like 375, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's not much from $1 billion, is it?
Yeah, that's not that much in
375
profit.
mil.
Yeah. The real question for CEOs is, where does this money go? You can hold it as cash. You put it in a few big savings accounts. You might invest it in stocks, bonds, whatever it might be. For example, Apple have a few $1 billion in cash on their balance sheet, but also have a whole bunch of that in public traded equities. So that's like stocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they might own things like Wells Fargo, the big bank in the US, a whole bunch of series of stocks, to make sure that the money that they're parking and they're not using is still making money, right? When you're a big business, you are essentially, you become an investor. That's how Fred and I think about it. Your job is to figure out, now with the money that I've made, where do I put it so that the business keeps growing? So you could put it aside, you could invest it, you could reinvest it into the company. And so that would involve things like hiring more people, opening up a new office. The final part of this option is actually about mergers and acquisitions. What that means is buying different companies that allow us to grow faster. So that might be in the sense of buying revenue. So for example, company A makes $1 billion. They buy another company that's making $100 million, and you buy that company and put that in your company. So together you get to a $1.1 billion. And so that's a 10% growth rate on your business. You could also buy, for example, and so this happens all the time in financial news. Microsoft buys this product. Apple's buying this hardware business.
Apple buys Beats.
Apple buys
Facebook
Beats.
buys Oculus.
Yeah, Instagram, WhatsApp. There's a whole series of transactions that you realize that these assets are just moving around. And there's a very specific role in business that allows those assets to be allocated and to be acquired, and that is mergers and acquisitions for a company. My job at Finder is to do two things. The history of Finder comes from, and so for those of you who don't know what Finder is, it's a financial comparison business. It started off in 2005. Essentially, you go on finder.com, finder.com.au. Yeah, you can compare credit cards, personal loans, home loans, we think about it as personal finance decisions. And so whatever you need to make a personal finance decision on, where to open a bank account, whatever it might be, you can go and find it, and we can help you compare. Second part of the business is our technology business. And so that is the Finder app that we launched in March of 2020. And it's essentially a personal finance management app. So you go on there and it analyzes your spending, checks your credit score, helps you apply for more products. We actually, a few weeks ago, launched Bitcoin trading and Ethereum trading on there as well. And so
on Finder?
On the Finder app itself.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so you can jump on there and you can start depositing accounts. You can get that done within a magical Money. We love money. And you can deposit money into the Finder app, and you can make Bitcoin and Ethereum trading.
Okay.
That's a whole other story, but we launched that in like a few weeks. It's crazy. Wow. And so my job in this situation is, you can kind of see we're coming from a publishing editorial business where we're publishing a lot of content online, best credit cards, best home loans, best interest-free credit cards. And in that situation, that's one side of the business, but we are evolving into a financial technology business. So we're thinking about things like, for example, Robinhood in the US is just a fascinating business to follow because we're talking about a pure app play. And so you go on your phone and you can make trades. Like, that's incredible. Any retail investor can do it. And we want to be part of that movement. And it makes sense for us because our brand is so focused on financial decision-making that it just makes sense for us to go into product and engineering as well. And so my job in this situation is to do two things. Number one, our core business is about comparison. And so what that means is, how do we make sure that we get more content to more people? So that means buying different companies that, for example, might specialize in credit card content in Australia and buying their content and putting it on Finder. So essentially, you're trying to consolidate content on credit cards in Australia. So what that means is, if you go on Finder, you'll be able to find these different products, but you might also go on another website run by another part of our team who might specialize in travel credit cards or something.
Yeah.
And you might go there for some content as well. So we look at those targets and we try to figure out, how do we continue on our mission of empowering more people making financial decisions by building more content, getting more useful information out there. The second part about the strategy of the business is that transformation into product and engineering. And so my job is to help acquire different financial technology apps and products that allow us to build our portfolio of financial technology products. And so, for example, Robinhood is a great example. Our Finder app is, of course, available in Australia. But where I spend a lot of my time thinking about where personal finance is going and how Finder can play a bigger role in that situation. And so overall, if I come back to the actual question, the core outcome is, how do I help our global leadership team find acquisition targets so that we get good return on the money that we have? So if I look at a business and we can say we can get a product faster to market, if we buy this investing product, for example, in Australia, and we buy it, instead of taking 9 to 12 months to build something, is it better to spend money on this product and just get it in-house quick? Or would it be better to just build it and take our time? So that's a kind of conventional decision-making that we're thinking about just on a day-to-day. On a day-to-day basis, my job is a lot of meetings. The corporate development role is very much a strategy role supporting the global leadership. And so I work with senior leaders in Australian business and US business, UK business. My job is to understand where we are at, and then to give a recommendation on how potential targets can help accelerate that process of the global corporate strategy. And our corporate strategy is quite simple. It's, how do we continue to help more people, which means to own more market share. And then secondly, how do we continue transforming into a product engineering driven business? And so that's the kind of two sides of our corporate strategy that I look after. And so that's all I spend my time thinking about. So it's a lot of meetings internally, meeting with potential partners, targets, and spending a lot of time just trying to provide the right thinking for global leadership.
Have you made any acquisitions in your role yet?
Yeah, so 2 deals. So I joined in September last year, right in the middle of COVID.
That's
Yes,
a rough time.
Spicy. So we bought a business in Australia. I can't disclose who it was, but it was the biggest deal that we've done for the business, which is massive. Wow. But it's in the comparison publishing space, and so
comparethemarket.com.
Oh my god, that's so spicy. Compare the Market's like one of our key competitors. And then we closed another deal in April. So that's publicly available. GoBear.com was a Southeast Asian comparison player. They were probably number 3, number 4 in the market, and so they were struggling financially, and we had the opportunity to make sure that some of the content that they've created, all the work that they put into the business since 2015, lived on. And so for us, we closed that deal, and that was massive. When you spend time on these deals, it takes 2 to 3 months to close something down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Once it gets started. And so we started that deal that closed in December. Probably started that process when I first started. And so it was like 3 months to get that deal done. We first got in touch with the crew from Go Bear probably in January as well. And so we closed in April. So another 3 months there. And so a lot of my job is you can imagine it. You're looking at a company, you need to figure it out. How does it make money? Why is it successful? Why hasn't it not been successful? What is the best way for us to work with this target? It could be acquiring the whole business. It could be acquiring parts of the business. So there's a whole series of decisions that you have to be able to make. My job is to do as much background as I can and contextualize it for our global leadership, for them to say, this is the best way, Jack. This is how we should do it. And then my job is to help structure the execution properly.
I can see why acquiring a business is very beneficial for Finder. Have you ever approached a business that they say they don't want to be acquired?
Oh, absolutely. There's my job is very much sales driven as well. It's about
it would be.
When you're talking about a merger and acquisition, let's talk about a recent deal. For example, let's talk about Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. So I think that's a deal that I think a lot of people are familiar with. At first, when Facebook approached Instagram to purchase the app, Instagram went interested because they were growing so fast. Within, I think, the first few months, they had tens of millions of users already. It was actually really interesting. This is just a very specific dynamic in that transaction. I was actually reading this on Twitter. There's this new Twitter profile that shares some of the emails that were sent from Mark Zuckerberg talking about the actual Instagram acquisition. So basically, when Instagram was acquired, Mark was really long on the business. He was like, we need to buy Instagram right now. This is like, we are going to be disrupted very quickly. The Instagram founders didn't actually want to sell. They're like, why do I need you guys? And so I hear that a lot of, why do we need Finder? What is Finder? In Australia, we have a very unique advantage as opposed to the work that I do for Finder US. In Australia, Finder is a very well-known brand. We are market leading. And so when people think about Finder, they think about the jingle. They think about most Australians have used finder.com.au before. And so when I or Chris, the Australian CEO, knocks on someone's door, we get a good answer. They say, it'd be good to chat. Let's talk. But in the US, it's very different. We are no-namers over there. I'm very upfront.
What I was going to play was...
What a banger. Yeah, that's the famous jingle. But in the US, we're no-namers. And so when I approach someone, they're probably like, I don't even know what Finder.com is. And so who are you? In the whole Facebook, Instagram situation, again, it's an example of every deal is very different. In that transaction in particular, Instagram founders weren't selling. There's actually a very interesting, but what happened was that deal obviously went through, and Mark actually, in the email that he sent to the chief strategy officer or the head of corp dev, the head of M&A, whoever it was, Mark says, we should offer them an amount that they can't turn down. And so you can see how even if they might not be keen, there's ways of making it work, especially in Facebook's situation where they just have so much capital to spend. And so the founders were like, we're not even making any money on this yet.
Yeah.
And you're going to pay me this figure? And so that's just a funny example. And so for me, my job is also when I come to you and I say, I like to buy your business or to talk about buying your business, it's actually kind of scary because we are most likely competing already. That's why I want to buy it. And so your thought process is usually going to be, I can't keep my enemies that close. But my job is to be convincing. And so you don't approach saying, let's talk about acquiring your business. For me, it's actually just about talking. Let's talk. I love to share about what we're thinking about, what we're seeing, and perhaps there's ways for both of us to grow together. You can see how that positioning is much more friendly than your competitor saying, I'm going to buy you out.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any key like sales tips that are good to approach any situation?
Yeah, we were talking about Jenny before. The same values. In my view, business is very simple. I see my role as being very simple as well. It is simply, if there are outcomes to be reached together, we should reach them. If there are not, let's move on. In this situation, it's this deal works and you should do it, or it just doesn't. And so my job is very simple. I need to understand the mindset of the founder, obviously coming from leading Jenny as well. That has helped me a lot in terms of thinking about, as a business owner, what am I thinking about for the business? A lot of these times, it's actually quite interesting. When we approach people, it's people talk about legacy a lot, actually, about their own legacy. For some people, they've spent a similar amount of time to find on their business. We're talking about like 10, 15 years of your life. Some of them might be retiring or just want to move on. And they want to make sure that the business, the purchaser who's coming in and trying to buy it, respects that. And so that has been a fascinating motivating factor that I didn't realize, but it makes so much sense. I mean, I thought about the same thing when we were choosing the next CEO for Jenny. It was, man, not only did I, alongside my leadership team and the whole organization and all the supporters, spend so much time on building this business, we need to make sure that the next person respects it and is committed to that journey. And so that has been very helpful. You think about, if I were to encapsulate like a tip, you're talking about just having empathy, right? As cliche as it sounds, life is so much about the relationships that you have, and understanding where people are coming from. And so what made me effective as a leader here makes me effective at Finder in this mergers and acquisitions role, because I've always thought about people and what drove them and what they cared about, and making sure that they had good outcomes for themselves as well, that they're taken care of. It's the same thing at Finder, except I think about these targets, as much as they can be classified as targets, I see them as team members as well. It's like, and you can kind of see how that positioning changes how you think about what I do, because it's, instead of Finder acquires a business, it's actually, we're going on this journey together. I think that redefines it for people as well. When we looked at the GoBear deal itself, the management team had to let go 150 people in closing down the business. So sorry, in January, they had cash flow issues, and so they went into liquidation, basically. They had to close down the whole shop, and so they had 160 people on their payroll. When you tell 150, 60 people that they don't have a job anymore, that's a tough situation. And so for us, it was actually really interesting, because you think about the opportunity for other investors to buy up the business. I think we were hearing the word on the street was people were just coming in and throwing ridiculous offers at the management team. They were just like, you guys are going bankrupt. I'm going to give you $1 and hand over everything you have. For us, we went in saying, well, actually, we see value in the assets that you have. We're very respectful of all that you've done so far. We're not here to lowball you. This is the best offer that we can do. This is truthfully the best offer we can do. And so this is where we want to continue your legacy that you've built for the business and make sure that all the hard work that you've put in continues on. And we were chosen as the right business partners for them in being acquired because we had respect and empathy for who they were. And that goes back to Fred and Frank. So they're the two global co-founders of the business. And I mean, they started their business when they were 23, 24. They knew the struggle. They knew how hard it was already. And so whenever I spoke to Frank, his number one thing to me was, we need to make sure that we are approaching with respect and love for what they've done. Because if we were in their positions, we would want to feel the same. And it was just such an easy alignment for how I thought about things that it just made all the sense in the world. It made that deal much easier. And it also helped us win. They chose us for a reason, and it was because we treated them differently than other people. And that is, again, just a simple part of business. It's the same thing that we thought about at Jenny. We don't do things purely for the money, but it is about, number one, what you think about is what's the outcome that we're delivering, and how do we help more people. And then we can talk about how this business grows, and we talk about how we make money. Once you do the first thing, everything else will fall into place as well. So
that's amazing to hear, that the fact that the business, I guess, like philosophy was still able to still have a sense of humanity behind it, because I think businesses often, especially very big corporations, get the stereotype that they're very cutthroat. And don't get me wrong, I do believe that there is a lot there, but the fact that Finder is able to remain with that honesty and support people in need, I think especially during 2020, because it was so rough. I think from the perspective of, let's say, because so many people actually or could have potentially lost their jobs, but I think even did during that period, and also Finder just being a business that's so or that has a great emphasis on comparing sort of finance across multiple different spectrums. How would you say, I think you're also in a unique position that you work at Finder, but you're also quite young. So what would your advice be to, I guess, younger people like ourselves in terms of how they could be saving up financially, or like how they could be doing better from a financial literacy standpoint?
Yeah, I'm not a financial expert, and none of this is financial advice. But I think the first thing to say is I'm on that journey as well, and it's not simple. I think the first thing that I'd say is the only thing I'd say is you just need to take ownership. It's part of growing up, and really the only thing I'm not here to talk about budgeting tips or where to put your money. I think it's just purely, especially at our age, the faster we grow up and we take ownership of these things and we're less reliant on our parents to do things for us, the better off we'll be. And it's not about decreasing dependency on your family and getting rid of family or whatever that might insinuate, but this is actually purely just, in order for you to be more successful, you need to take ownership for yourself and actually, by association, by taking care of yourself, you take care of your family, your loved ones, and whatever you need to do for the world. So that's the thing I'd say, yeah,
for sure. I think even last year, I always wanted to get into investing. And I never did until last year, because everyone started getting into investing. So I was like, I'll get into investing.
Let's go.
And, and the only Dogecoin to the moon.
This is not financial advice. Please consult your personal financial advisor.
Have red text at the bottom.
Disclaimer. Disclaimer.
I started getting into investing. Like, I kind of researched a bit, but really the best way I learned was just by doing it. So I bought shares, I bought cryptocurrency, and now like I really look at money differently. Like, I definitely look at it from an investment standpoint. Like, where can I put my money? Like, I don't want to keep my money in the bank account. I want to, kind of like what you said, diversifying a business's capital to assets. Kind of same way I want to diversify my capital to be assets.
That's actually fascinating. Yeah, we are our own, like, every financial decision you make is about getting the best for your money. And so I think Warren Buffett is a big fan of course, compounding your money. He was well renowned for being a big cost saver for himself, because he knew that if on a yearly basis he made 20% on his money, that compounds very quickly. And so for us, 20%, that compounds quickly for his businesses, but we don't think about that in the same level for ourselves. In that situation, actually, $1 under Warren Buffett, 10 years on, that same dollar would actually be worth like $100. And so in that situation, it's like, wait, this could be worth $100 to me in the future. What am I doing? Right? it's a fascinating thought process. Yeah.
It kind of comes back to what Jenny does as well in terms of entrepreneurship. Like, you don't learn this in school. You don't learn about investing or where to put your money.
So true.
Same with entrepreneurship. You don't learn that in school. So really,
those type of skills, man, are like critical.
You have to kind of just go out there and be self-motivated to find the information.
Yeah, dude, let's talk about like 2020. I mean, that statement itself is so fascinating because it's so true. A generation of young people, our generation, first dipped our toes because we were just at home all day. Being like, I don't know what else to do. Got to get off YouTube and TikTok. So better do something productive. And so this is, I don't think there's been a time in history that so much activity came from this younger generation. And I flag it because it's so fascinating to think about. Once you start at this age, how does that fine-tune your decision-making in your life? And how does that compound? Making an investing decision, i.e. where to put your money, is you need to be structured with it, and you need to have a core belief in what you're buying and what's going on. But that is also the same for any other decision that you make in your life. Going to university, your job, your partners, your friends, buying a house. I mean, these are all like key decisions for your life, man. And the earlier that young people get amongst it, is the better off we're all going to be. I think that's a key takeaway for me, just thinking about the last year or two.
Exactly on that note, I think unfortunately we do have to close up shop for now. But on that, you said it attaches itself to all sorts of decisions. Before we end, like, what would be one key piece of advice that I think would you just give to anyone that's listening, that, you know, that has helped you in your journey?
Any advice?
Any sort of advice.
That's a hard one. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think something that's really interesting to me, and I actually said this to some of the guys on the Jenny team now. The faster young people think about and make a decision to grow up, I think staying in our state of mind at the moment and youthful naivety, I don't think is a good thing. I think the faster we grow up, the faster we're in control of our lives, and the more that we're able to perfect ourselves and then allow us to do good things for the world. And I think growing up is not just about getting rid of your youthful pursuit of knowledge or beauty or whatever it might be. That is not a time in life. That should be just who we are as people. I think growing up is about what are the things in your life that you want to accept and you choose to accept. I'm a big believer that the life that we have comes from decisions that we make, and I think that's obviously just as a fact. It's just when you say that statement, it's like, well, duh, obviously. But it's actually, you realize that the relationships that you have, which might be toxic, or the places that you want to be, that you're not there yet, these are all decisions that you make. I see very life simply like that. And so I think the faster, I said this to some of the leadership team as well here, the faster you grow up, the faster you're more in control, and the faster that you get to do more for yourself and then minimize regret for who you want to be. And so I think that's what I've realized very recently as well. And so I think that's key.
Well, thank you so much for that, Jack. And I think that was a beautiful note to end on. And that concludes episode 3 of our podcast. And so I think Babe and I would like to deeply thank you, Jack, for enlightening us on the wonders of technology and, you know, your experience and your personal journey along Jenny and at Finder. So we're signing off now. I'm Edward.
And I'm Babe.
And this was the Entrepreneurial Mindset. See you guys.